I start by asking Jim what his advice would be to someone who wanted to start betting.
If you're going racing as a bit of fun, treat it as a bit of fun. Bet in the smallest stakes possible, £2 on the tote, and I really mean that. And follow your own instincts. If you want to bet seriously, or you're looking to back horses in any sort of a serious manner, you've got to work at it. Otherwise, you might as well just take not so much the pin approach, but you might as well take the fun approach. And I tell you what, really, it bothers me sometimes, and I'm not picking out between the sexes. Because I actually had a row with a lady over this. I did a survey for the BHA once, and I spoke to one of the reps at William Hill. And in 2000, when Foot and Mouth came, and there was no racing for months, they actually, people used to bet on the Irish lottery because it fewer numbers and you could win small amounts. And women really like that because the bookmakers or Hills found women are not greedy punters. Blokes are. Especially if they're with their mates. And, you see a group of half a dozen lads go to the races and they all have to have 20 quid on. They couldn't possibly have £2 on, could they? Because they look small in the eye of their friends. So they all back 6 losers each. They've all lost 120 quid. They've all paid to get in. They've all had a few drinks. It's suddenly a very expensive day. If you don't know about it and you're going for fun, please just treat it as fun. So I can't really answer if you go now and again, or I just want to bet in the Grand National. There's an old statistic that 58% of the races on the flat are won by the first or second favourites. You could say, well, if you go 8-10 times a year and you tended to stick with the first and second favourite on the flat, that you've got more chance of getting a return than if you're just sticking a pin in. There might be something in that, but it's a difficult thing to take lightly, and it's seriously something I don't like. When people ask me, have you got a tip? I go, if I've had a bet, I'll go, I'll tell you what I've backed, but I haven't got a tip. I'm not telling you to back it. I'm saying this is what I've backed. If you want to back it, it's up to you. Because unfortunately, people think you know a lot more than everybody else, and you might know a lot more, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to tip a lot more winners.
And if someone wanted to follow in your footsteps and work at Timeform, how would they go about doing this?
Same as I did, write for an interview and outline where you are with your own education. Have you got you don't have to be a boffin, but if you've got a decent education, that obviously helps because it gives them more options with you. If you, I didn't have a university degree. I wasn't clever enough to go to university or even wanted to. If I had been, I wanted to get on and work in racing. But if you've got a university degree and you can write, it does help. But if you've got a keen interest in form, say so. And I don't know if it's different now, but certainly when I was there, even if we didn't have jobs available, we wanted people on file that were good, that we could call up at short notice if it came. So, in my time, I interviewed quite a lot of people that say, look, there's no job at the minute, but you can come along and we'll put you on file. And if you're good, we'll put you on file. And as soon as a job becomes available, we'll come back and let you know. We got a lot of people like that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no point being. This is the truth. I remember somebody came for a job in IT. Now it said on it, knowledge of racing not essential but helpful. So you didn't have to know anything about racing, but it was obviously a plus if you did, I suppose. Anyway, this is a young fella, perfectly nice, turned up, smartly dressed. And I said at the end, he answered all the general questions, not about racing, about IT, not that I knew much, but that I'd been told to ask. And I said, do you know anything about racing? Oh, yeah, I follow it every Saturday. And I said, so if I said to you, is Frankie Dettori a trainer or a jockey? What would you say to me? He said, oh, he's a trainer. So I said, I don't have to ask you one more thing about racing. You've just told me with one answer that you know absolutely nothing about racing. Now, it doesn't matter with regard to this job, but it should be a lesson for it. Don't tell fibs at interviews. Because Frankie Dettori is probably the best known person in racing over the last 10 or 15 years. And you said he's a trainer.
So what did he say after you said that? I bet he felt like a right fool.
Well, he went red and he didn't get the job either.
So after your time at Timeform, then you went on to work within television, wasn't it?
No, they ran side by side. I applied for a job that became available on ITV in 1980 because racing was on ITV and BBC in those days. And there was an audition for it. And 12 of us were shortlisted out of a list of 60. And we were told to go to Sandown in December for the Friday of the 2-day December meeting. And the list included myself, Derek Thompson, Graham Rock, who I mentioned to you earlier, who went on to work for the Sporting Chronicle and the Racing Post, but used to work at Timeform. A guy called Tim Richards, who's very well known, worked in racing for a long time. He's retired now. Pauline Hall, who got a lot of practical experience with horses. Tony O'Hare, who still works in Ireland in racing. So we all went down and we had to do a piece to camera, introduce the racing. And those who wanted to be commentators, which wasn't me, I was interested in being a pundit, had to do a smooth commentary. It was a real baptism of fire, Hannah, because it was snowing.
Oh.
So we're sitting outside doing these dreadful pieces to camera because only Derek was any good. And the snow was coming down, and eventually it was all abandoned, and we did it again at Doncaster 2 weeks later. But to cut a long story short, Derek won that contest, if you like. He got the job, but because Bruff Scott and John Oaksey, Lord Oaksey, both wrote from big national newspapers, the Sunday Telegraph and the Sunday Times. Sometimes, if ITV were at a little meeting on a Saturday, they had to write copy about what was happening on the big meeting for Sunday. And the papers didn't like that, say, John Oaksey and Bruff were at Hereford and they were writing about Ascot when half of Britain that was interested in racing could see that they weren't there. So I got a job for 8 days a year. Derek got the main overall job as a backup for them. And that's what I did for 4 years. I did those 8 days and it sort of grew from there. So
you were doing them alongside each other?
Eventually, yeah. And then racing moved on to Channel 4, where it remained until the end of 2016. So 1984, it moved on to Channel 4, and it was there for the next 32 years. And I worked there all that time, yeah. And
then now you do things within the BHS?
I was a director of BHB, as it was first, and then BHA, 2004 to 2010, while I was still at Timeform, or largely still at Timeform. I left Timeform in 2009, and I've worked freelance since then. I work, now and again for Sky Racing on some of their bigger meetings. I'm lucky enough to do that. I'm a director at Newbury, and I still do a little bit for Timeform, believe it or not. When they're short of paddock people, I'm quite happy to send in some notes of how the horses look.
Yeah. So you're still quite busy doing all sorts of things. And what's your favourite job been, would you say, from the past?
Oh, looking at the horses. I mean, you're very lucky to work in television because you, by and large, most TV crews, and I mean, that encompasses everybody, from, a floor manager, director, the cameraman, the soundman. We were like a big family. That was lovely to be part of that for so long. And a lot of those people are still my friends. And the thing about television is everybody's important. You might think, oh, I'm on camera, I'm the most important. Rubbish. You cannot do a good TV show without everybody. Absolutely everybody has a role to play. Otherwise, it doesn't run smoothly. And that's what you're aiming for. You're aiming at smooth, seamless broadcasting. But what do I really like to do? Ultimately, horses are what motivate me or what inspire me. I mean, I went to Ripon on Saturday because there was a press place available. It was far from the best Ripon card ever because there were only 30 plus horses, but it was fresh air. There were 7 2-year-olds to look at, so there was something worth going for, and you always learn something.
You own and breed horses now, don't you, as well?
I haven't got anything in training at the minute, but I've had a lot of horses. I'd have been retired in a Caribbean island now if I hadn't had any horses. But anybody that's owned horses, Hannah, doesn't have a lot of money, or they don't have as much money as they otherwise would have done, because it's a very expensive hobby, but it's great fun. I mean, with a guy called Reg Griffin, who died in 2008, I bred quite a lot of horses, and one of them was a very good one called Decorated Hero, who was part of Frankie Dettori's Magnificent Seven at Ascot. And he won 14 races, including, I think it was 3 or 4 Group 2s. So, and he finished third in the Breeders' Cup Mile. And I remember thinking, good Lord, I own the dam of that. And that horse has just finished third in a Breeders' Cup Mile. So that's the interest you get with horses, even if you've sold them or you don't own them anymore. If they're out of your mare, you follow them.
What was your involvement with the breeding? Were you there on a lot of the time looking at what's going on? And
the bill payer, Hannah. The bill payer paid all the bills. The mares were kept in Ireland with a very good friend of Reg's, the Collins family. Reg knew, it's Michael that runs it now, Michael Collins that runs it, but his father, Dick Collins, used to know Reg from years ago. So that they had a friendship going back a long way. So they went there. We go over 3 or 4 times a year and pay the bills on time and then decide to keep them or sell them. Mm-hmm. I never wanted to sell anything. I always wanted to race it, but it's just so expensive.
Do you ride now at all?
I haven't sat on a horse to ride since 1984.
Oh wow!
There is apart from the fact that you're very unlikely to get into a stable. There's nothing worse than an amateur that can't really ride. Turning up to ride a horse once a week, and the trainer goes, "Oh, how lovely to see you!" Thinking, "What the hell can I put this sack of spuds on?" And somebody, has to be a quiet horse. Somebody has to watch it. Not that there aren't. Don't get me wrong. There are lots of good amateurs that go in and do it. But somebody like me that wasn't fit, and I was sort of riding now and again after I'd had that pre-apprentice trial. Livery horses and things like that. You're no help to a yard or a trainer.
So have you got any retired horses that you own now just as pets?
No. What I've always done from long before, and I don't just mean me, a lot of people have done it. There's not fashionable, there's a very necessary thing called the retraining of racehorses. Always try and find them a good home. Always. It doesn't always work out, sadly. You give horses away in good faith. Most people do what they say they'll do with them, but unfortunately, there are 1 or 2 that don't.
We have a lot of them here because I'm living on a yard, and we have a lot of them here, and they're turned into horseball horses.
And are the majority of them good?
Yeah, they are. There's one here now. It went to polo after, but it was too fast for polo, would you believe? Unstoppable. So she's here now, but she's lovely. And with mares, they can be a bit temperamental, but she's very nice. She's very willing. We'll see what she's like when she gets to 6, but yeah. They're pretty good.
I don't mean this in any critical way of anyone that does this work. I am slightly wary about when they go back for a parade, which is obviously necessary to make awareness and to try and raise more money, because there's never enough money for this type of thing, despite the fact that every owner in Britain, through collection from Weatherby's, it's part of an owner's contract that you make a small contribution to the retraining of racehorses. But sometimes you get a horse, it's been brilliant since you've rehomed. It's been rehomed and it's learned to relax and switch off. It gets back to the race course and it hears the tannoy, and it's a little bit hyper. So I always have my heart in my mouth a bit, but no, they do a lot of good work, and the horses deserve as good a home as possible. And Richard Fahey in particular, not exclusively. I had quite a few horses with Richard. He's a wizard at finding homes for them. He seems to know quite a lot of people who will rehome them.
Where are your horses based, or where were they based? Were they all in Ireland, did you say?
No, the breeding horses were in Ireland at Lesia Stud on the Curragh. That was through a friendship, and a long friendship with the Collins family. Yeah. But no, principally I've had horses not exclusively in the north, but largely in the north. John Joe O'Neill's a very good friend of mine, and I had jumpers with him when he was up at Ivy House. In Cumbria, and he moved down, I think it was around 99-2000 to Jackdaw's Castle, JP's place, and obviously the handful I've had since then have been down there, but mainly they've been with Mark Johnson, Tim Easterby, Richard Fahey, and I've had a lot of fun.
Oh, well, that's the main thing. Fun.
fun and a living, a lucky passage through life.
So what do you do then besides racing, hobby-wise? Do you do anything else like golf or?
Well, as John Frankham said, the trouble with Jim is he's not just boring; he's amazingly boring. Yeah, I do a bit. I play a bit of bad golf, and I like music. I go to obviously not the last year, but the last 4 or 5 years, I've gone to a lot of live music concerts. I don't like big venues,
Yeah.
but you can see a lot of good people at small venues these days. And if you're in racing and you still do what lucky enough to do what I do on Sky, you've got to follow it, Hannah. It's like me saying I'm a football scout, but I don't bother watching matches anymore. I can see a good player from just by you. If you're a pundit in racing, in the role that I'm used, and there are other people using that role as well in the same way, you've got to go. You've got to keep on the form. You've got to keep on the pedigrees. So you can't be in racing, even in a lesser role that I've got now, and not do the work. If you're not going to do the work, you shouldn't have the job.
But thank you so much. Honestly, this has been very beneficial.
Not at all. It's an absolute pleasure. Good luck, and I'll send you that email.
Yes, thank you so much. All right, we'll speak soon.
Bye.
Bye.